I believed in God from a young age. Like, I thought God was real. I thought that, like, the Bible was God's word. Jesus was God's son, and like all the stories that you hear in Sunday school. I thought those were real. March 24th, 2005. It is my second birthday, as I call it. My name is Matt Robison. I am 31 years old. So it was Sunday school, it was big church. When I was in junior high and high school, it was the retreats and the camps. Went through confirmation. So I was in all of it. And I legit thought that I was going to heaven. I absolutely believe that children can pray and believe in God and God can save them. I never really wanted friends to know that I went to church. So like in my daily life, there wasn't a lot of effect or influence. At the same time, like while I was going to church, I was also like got caught in some addictions that I was keeping secret. I mean, some of it involved drugs. There was a girl that I dated in high school, and just how that relationship went wasn't good. The things that I was watching, and in my mind, it was like it just wasn't a big deal. But I still believed in God. I still thought he was real. I still thought I was going to heaven. So things started to shift in 10th grade. So our church went on a spring break mission trip to the place is called Mission Arlington, and it's in Arlington, Texas, near Dallas. Our church went over spring break, and the mission center sent us to an apartment complex to do like a vacation Bible school for the week. So initially, I didn't really want to go because it was all of spring break, and I was like, I'm not going to have any time to hang out or do anything. So my mom signed me up, and I was like, okay. We go to Mission Arlington. They send us to some apartments, and we go to the park in the apartments and meet all the kids there. And then we do games, Bible stories, snacks, arts and crafts. We play games with them, have fun with them, and then teach them. There's like different Bible stories that we would have each day. So we would teach them the gospel and pray with them and things like that. Up until that point, it was literally the most incredible thing that I had ever done. Like the week absolutely blew me away. So I've been doing art since I was little. I've been drawing since I was really, really little. So that's always been kind of in my life and something that I've been doing. But it was on that trip that I learned that I love to work with kids. There was something incredible about Mission Arlington itself, because I just remember like things, like crazy things would happen and the way that things would work out. It was just crazy to watch how people, just the way that they acted and the way that, things happened. So I left that week absolutely blown away. So then I came back. I started volunteering at a nearby kind of like community center and working with those kids. So I started that, but like the habits that I was doing, all of that stayed the same. Then my junior year, our church went back to Mission Arlington. So again, I signed up. I was like excited this time. I wanted to go. It was still amazing. It was still incredible. And the funny thing was, I didn't really understand why it was so amazing. That trip ended, came back home, same thing. Back in the same habits. They just kept getting worse. The next February, the senior high did a weekend event here at the church and called Disciple Now. The speaker for the weekend talked about love, and he talked about loving people the way that Jesus does. And he used one of his friends as an example for just the way that she forgave people and how she was kind and how she treated everybody at her school, and people like were really drawn to it. My thinking was, if I just love people the way that this speaker was talking about, if I love people the way that Jesus does, if I'm kind to people, if I'm forgiving, if I'm good to people, then that'll like bring me back to God. I started going around school trying to do as much good as I could to people. I would be at the vending machine and somebody would be like, "Hey man, can I have $1, to get some snacks?" And I would give them like a $5 bill, and they're like, "Oh, I don't have any change." And I'm like, "Keep the change, please keep it all. And I thought that was like super generous. And so people at lunch table would be like, hey man, can I have some of your Skittles? And I would give them like half the bag. And they were like, what? I can have all these Skittles? And I was like, yes, please take them all. I was like, I am so generous. Nobody gives half their bag of Skittles to anybody. So I thought I was on the right track. What's funny was I also like didn't even stop to think that maybe I should be reading the Bible either during this time. So I cracked it open one time, started reading it, and I was like, what? So I closed it and then went back to trying to be good to everybody. Shortly before spring break, my mom called Mission Arlington, asked them if there was any churches in the area going, hung up. Like a minute later, she gets a call from a youth pastor. The church is about 15 minutes away. And he said that they had one spot available on their trip and that if I wanted to take it, I could go. Didn't know these people, never heard of this church, never been to it. Sunday morning rolls around, I got my bags, we drive over to this church and I start meeting everybody. I meet the youth pastor. All the kids were like very friendly, very welcoming. We drive to Arlington. We're working with the kids. It's amazing. And so everything kind of came to a head on Wednesday night. So that night, we all went back to the apartment that we were staying at. So it was me, the youth pastor, his name is Kim, and another guy named Michael, one of the leaders. We were the only three that were awake. We were about to go to sleep, and Kim says to Michael something about the Bible, something, I guess, a Bible thing that he was going to start teaching. So I was like, I've heard a lot about the Bible recently. So I started telling him about the Disciple Now weekend and the speaker and how I was going around school doing good to everybody and just kind of sharing that with Kim. And so Kim told me two things that at the time I didn't understand. So after sharing all that, he's like, Matt. He's like, you are trying to do good works to get into heaven, and that's not how it works. And so he said that, and I was like, what? I'm already, like in my mind, I'm thinking I'm already going to heaven. I'm not trying to get into heaven. I'm just trying to get back to God again, right? And then he said, the only person that can make you right with God is God. And so at the time I was like, what does that mean? And so we start talking about God. We start talking about the cross. It starts to get deep. And I'm starting to think that like the things that we're talking about, like I should have a better understanding of, but I don't. And there was a moment where, and it only lasted for a split second, where there was a sensation of like slamming into a brick wall at like 100 miles an hour. It was as if we were driving in a car going like 100 miles an hour and somebody slammed on the brake. It was just this crazy sensation. And so that was the first time in my life that I realized that I was not saved, or that I wasn't a Christian, and that I didn't actually know God. And I can remember sitting there, and it was like almost like molasses, just like sinking in really slowly, that I didn't know God. And so I guess what was so weird about it was my whole life I've been in church. My whole life I've believed in God. And here I am, 18 years old, and God has just opened my eyes to see that all of that was not true. That wasn't the case, that I really didn't know him. And I said, Kim, I don't know what's going to happen to me when I die. But Kim was like, we should pray. And I was like, yeah, we should pray. So we got up and we kind of got together, and he said, let me lead you in a prayer. And I said, yeah, let's do that. And so he kind of led me in a prayer of like believing in Jesus and giving my life to him and really confessing all the things that I had been doing. And so he would say something and I would kind of pray it. But as we were praying, I kind of just started saying my own thing and just really confessing and praying to God, this is what I've been doing and I need you to save me because I don't know you. And so I started praying that. And after we said amen, I felt like this was a big deal. So I looked to see what time it was. So it's 12:24 a.m. Thursday morning, March 24th, 2005. I was 18 years old. And that's when God saved my life for real. And so I laid back in my sleeping bag and I'm kind of like looking up at the wall, but it just has this like totally different look to it. And I can remember laying there feeling peace. It felt like it was inside of my chest, like it was inside of my body, and it felt like it was shooting out. And I had never felt peace before, and I definitely had never felt peace inside of me. And so the next morning I get up and I can remember walking through the hallway because it felt like I was walking through a fog. And it wasn't like the fog was blocking my view, but it was like this awareness of God's presence, like God is everywhere. And I had never seen this before. So I was like literally walking through the hallway, like looking around. And Kim's wife realizes what's going on, and she says 2 Corinthians 5:17, which is anyone who's in Christ is a new creation. The old is gone, the new has come. So that was like the first Bible verse that I heard as a Christian. And she was like, this has happened to you. You're a new creation. And when she said that, even though I had heard that before, it sounded different because I knew that it had happened in real life to me. There were 3 big changes mentally. So one was, in my mind, I was just thinking about how God's presence is everywhere. The other thing was that I could pray to God anytime I wanted to. And the third thing was that I was here for God's glory. And I had never truly thought, not just about those, but that was my way of thinking now. And so I thought, okay, well, if I can pray to God anytime I want to, and I'm here for his glory, why don't I pray, God, use me for your glory? On the last day that we were working with the kids, so these kids come over to me and they have just blank t-shirts and markers, and they're like, can you draw a picture of Jesus? And I was like, okay, sure. And so I'm like, okay, I'll draw the cross, so and I drew some angels and, God is love. And I gave it to the kid, and this other girl's like, do that to me. And so I do another one. Some of these t-shirts look kind of nice. I'm like, should I be drawing on Sharpie on this nice dress? I don't know. And so, but I did it anyway. And then it hits me that this was an answer to the prayers of God using me for his glory. This is real. I'm praying to God and he's saved me, and now he's interacting in my life, and he's bringing me these kids and using art to spread him to these kids. It was such a crazy thing to see happen, and it kind of took, like I said, it took me back. After we came back from Arlington, the changes that happened were drastic and rapid mentally. The thoughts that I was having and the way that I was thinking, the priorities that I had, the desires that I had. After God saved me, I wanted to read the Bible, which was way different. And then as I was reading it, the things, just the words looked different. They made sense. I could understand them. I could understand that I could do these things, which was totally different. I wanted to tell people, not just at school, but our neighbors in the apartments that we were living in. And like I said before, that was not something that I wanted to do. And it was as if there was a fog just over everybody. It was an awareness of everybody needs Jesus. These people need him. And I had never seen that before. I like to do drawings during worship services. So while the music or the message is going on, to be there drawing a picture, something that a lot of times it's something that relates to the message or whatever is being spoken about. And I do enjoy speaking and teaching and public speaking, so I do like to share my story and share the gospel while drawing. So especially to kids, especially the little kids, that's my favorite. I really feel a calling and a leading to share the gospel with children. I love talking about him with people, and I love hearing what they think and what they believe. And having those conversations about God and helping people to understand him more, or pushing them towards him and towards a better understanding of him. So that's kind of like an everyday thing. Like I can tell when I'm not doing that, that I'm not doing what God has called me to do. I love doing that at work because there's people right there. Like I feel like you should start sharing the gospel with the people that are right around you. Just start doing ministry and sharing the gospel wherever you are. So I find myself at work, there's people there, let's talk about Jesus. You can be going to church and you can know a lot about God and you can be doing some good things, but there is a difference between knowing about him and knowing him personally. And also, I would say no matter what struggle there is, or addiction, or habit, or rut you're in, God is able to save you out of anything. That his grace is big enough to forgive you for anything that has happened or anything that you've done. His grace is big enough to break any addiction or habit or chain, anything that you're stuck in or that is keeping you down or keeping you from him. He really did rise from the dead, and he really can save you. I've also seen no matter how far you wander or how many mistakes you make or how many times you fail or disobey God, that his grace is still there. And he won't give up on you, and he will continually chase after you and pursue you to bring you back to closer to himself and on the way that he has for you. There was things like drugs and addictions and just lifestyle choices that I was finally able to say no to and start and replace them with following Jesus. Not that I've never failed or disobeyed. Of course I have, and then that's why I say, even when you do, it's amazing how God still reaches out to you.